Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Present Potential. It's great to have you and welcome to the new subscribers, members, people who are listening. And I love the engagement and the connection with people. We've been doing this for quite some time now, and I really feel the connection with everyone. And I thank you so much for coming to listen and to engage with us and to listen to our speakers speak as well. So, without further ado, this session or this episode is slightly different, where it's not a live LinkedIn session, but rather it's pre recorded. But in the same fashion, the discussion is authentic, it's raw, and it's honest. So, we're just going to go with the flow. And I'm so happy to introduce you to one of my, I would say, colleagues, someone that we came across in the coaching industry, in the coaching course, in the certification school as well. And I'm so happy to have her here to share her wisdom with us. Sarah comes from the corporate environment where she spent years in leadership and also operations management. And then she transitioned to become a coach, and she focuses on self leadership, business coaching, and mindfulness advocate. One thing that I always admire in Sarah, and I see it almost frequently on her social media presence, it's her passion and advocacy of how she embraces yoga and the holistic approach to living a more purposeful life that is really full of value and drive to achieve one's needs. So, without me going into any more details, I'll allow Sarah to introduce herself. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you for welcoming me back to your podcast. And I mean, you did such an amazing job introducing myself. I don't know what to say now, but I'm Sarah. I'm a holistic self leadership and business coach. And I work mostly with women, and my mission is to help women take control of their lives, emotions, and business. So thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to having this chat with you.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that so much. So, maybe we could start from the beginning, because usually what we do in this podcast is we try to understand people's stories. Well, when I say we, it's really me. I'm very curious and intrigued by how stories develop and things have changed over time. So maybe we could start from the beginning. What what was what was something that you wanted to be when you were a child? What was some like career path or an aspiration that you wanted to get into?
That's a really good question. It's funny because I think what I wanted to be was a journalist. I dreamed of becoming a journalist for years, and then when I grew up, I it I changed my mind. I learned more about tourism, and then I wanted to work in the tourism industry, which I actually accomplished. I worked for over a decade in the tourism industry, but it wasn't that when I was little. I was very curious about becoming like a journalist and like interviewing people, talking with people, communicating with people, connecting with people. So that was something that I really loved. And also, um, I was very interested in, I think, just, writing blog posts and things like
It's
that.
interesting that you said journalism, and this might sound like a weird question, but when I was growing up or really young, I never knew what journalism was. So, how did you come across journalism, or did you meet someone who's a journalist that inspired you?
Funny thing, I used to watch the TV show, Superman, Lois and Clark, and
Yeah.
Lois was she was a journalist. They were both, Clark Kent and Lois, and I loved that how they were following people and trying to get the scoop and looking for the truth. And so I guess that's how I came across journalism as a child, and then from there it just grew a passion of writing. I used to write in journals and things like that, so I guess that's how it all started.
That's amazing. I love that. So it's looking at a cartoon or like people who are um not real, but like they have a real job that seem
Mhm.
really captivating and engaging. And I'm wondering if you can remember the first interview that you've ever had.
You mean for me or
Yeah, as a journalist or someone that you met that you felt that you wanted to interview, and the first memory that you can recall where you actually sat with someone or recorded someone or just asked questions to understand what they do or who they are, or even like in any journalism sense of the word.
yes, I think it was in school and we had a project to do, and we had to interview either a professor or someone, an adult that had a very interesting career. And so we had to ask questions and then present like an expose about the information we gathered. So I guess that was the first time that I actually interviewed someone.
Oh wow. And I know it might be challenging to remember, but how did you feel like during the interview or even afterwards, after going into that process of becoming like one of your superheroes growing up? What was that feeling like?
It was nice. I guess I was young, so I don't exactly remember, but I think that I liked to do all the research as well. So gathering all the information around the person or the fact checking that they told us. I think I really liked that part, and then we had a really good grade, so it was amazing. But yeah,
Oh wow. And then so after that, um, how did you get into the career and tourism? Is it really connected to what you wanted to do, or I'd love to hear that.
it is not. So when I remember it was at the end of high school. So I still had that project of becoming a journalist. And um, I think one of my professor was telling me, it's very difficult. And I had this school that I had in mind that was in Paris that I wanted to get to. I had like my plan laid out, and then I had like a part-time job. Sometimes I would do like summer jobs and things like that. And I met this woman that was doing the summer job, but she was working in tourism, and she did like a tourism diploma, and I was going to go in university. I think 2 years after that, and so she explained to me her career, what she did. And everything around it, and then it just sparked something in me. Um, I was seeing her traveling a lot and helping people plan their trip and many other perks. And so I started to reflect on that and potentially changing the course of my studies. And so I started looking that up. And when I remember someone telling me, you won't be working a single day of your life if you're doing something that you're passionate about or you don't feel that is a job. And around, I think when I was 18, I started planning trips for me and my friends, and I would look for flight tickets for um, like days and days, really. And at the end of the day, I was thinking, oh, wow, I really didn't see the time, so the time flew by. And after that, it's like maybe that's something that I should explore. Maybe that's a different career that I should look into. But that time, I was already in university, and I had choose English as a like main topic. But I knew that I might wanted to get into tourism, but I loved English, and I just choose something that I love, and I was like, even from the English course, I can pivot to go to journalism if I wanted to. So it was just kind of like the introduction. And so from there, I completely changed and I applied to a tourism school. And then from there, it was just the beginning of my career. And um, I did like a business school in tourism. And then after that, I started my career in tourism.
Oh wow. So from meeting that one lady and asking her about tourism and getting inspired by her, and it kind of reminds me of my journey as well, because there was a moment where I went to a bank with my father when I was 6 or so, and that kind of was the memory that drew me into the financial world. So I'm wondering, like that person that inspired you, what was it about her describing this industry or like how tourism is that you felt very connected with in order to kind of maybe even bring the writing or journalism with the focus in tourism? What was that thing that maybe you would have noticed or felt connected to her with?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that I just liked the fact that she was traveling a lot and I wanted to travel a lot because I didn't really travel when I was younger. So I think that that was something that I wanted to accomplish. And from there, I even at some point like created like a tourism blog where I was blogging about the place I was traveling to. And even in my first job, my first few jobs, part of my role was also to write blog posts about cities that we would visit to encourage people to go to these cities. And so I tried to kind of intertwine them at some point, but then I just really went solid into the tourism past and less into like the writing one, even though I helped write brochures and things like that. So there was still some writings, but then I got further away from journalism.
So it's the traveling and just going to different places that really drew you into that industry. And what was one of the places that you dreamt of visiting at that point in time? Like, where did you want to go? What was a city or a country that you felt that you wanted to be there and experience it, or part of like that whole experience that you were going into the tourism industry?
Yes, it was the US. It was like North America. That was a dream
Mhm.
since I was little. I always dreamed of living in North America, specifically the US. I loved New York. That was the first city that I loved, and then it was California. So I always wanted to go to live in North America, and visit, because then I was in Europe. I was living in Europe at that time. And so I used to visit some town in Europe, which was very nice, but I always wanted to go in the American continent. So when I was able to, I started just traveling, always traveling there every year. During my vacation, I would go to Canada because I had family there, and then I will visit New York or any other town in the US. And I don't know how many times I've been there. And then until I moved to Canada after I finished my studies.
Oh, wow. So you actually lived your dream basically
Yes.
of traveling to or living in North America
Hmm.
and it's where you ended up. So you're living in North America and always visiting the cities that you were dreaming of as like a young aspiring tourism professional combined with like writing about cities and actually doing that. How did you feel when you first moved? What was it like experiencing a new place and going and relocating?
It was scary, but it was exciting. It was a lifelong dream. So I was really looking forward to it every year. I remember I wanted to leave right after high school, but my mom was like, no, you need to finish your studies and then go after that. And which made sense at the end of the day. And that's where also I met my husband. So even though I was planning already on moving there, so it was just fate that we met. And so I was I was okay when I moved. It was difficult to have my friends back home and my family, but I was so happy to be in the country I wanted to be and experiencing everything that I wanted to experience there. That everything went smoothly.
Wow. I love that. It's so inspiring. Like dreaming of moving and being at a certain place, and even like trying to do it sooner rather than later, and saying to your mom, I want to move now. And it's right after high school. And she said, no, just finish your university or like your education before you do move. But then you eventually did move. So regardless of what happened within that phase, which sounds like it was also an incredible experience meeting your husband and then ultimately moving to North America together. And
Mhm.
then when you were in Canada, um, did you also work in the tourism industry? Like what was like your first experience there in terms of a career or profession?
Yeah, I was an event coordinator or like operation coordinator. So I helped international students discover Canada and the US. So we were organizing trips for students all over the US and Canada. And I think I lasted 6 months in the coordinator role, and then I moved to a director to a manager role right after, because I was so passionate about what I was doing that I moved up the ladder pretty fast. And so I was organizing trips, working on marketing a little bit, on promoting these trips, leading some of these trips as well. So I was a guide for a few of these trips. And so that's what I was pretty much doing.
Oh wow. And then how did you get involved with yoga? Because from what I know is you also lead retreats now and you have
Mhm.
classes and when did that practice start? What was it around the same time? Was it after? Like how did you get into that?
Not at all. So it's funny you ask. So I think I had tried a couple of yoga class when I was younger, in my 20s, and I always real I was a very nervous person, so very stressed, and I was working in tourism, so we had like high season, and but I could handle stress. That was one of my my top quality, let's say, where I could work under pressure very well. And I had tried yoga, but in France, it was not as developed as in North America. So I was, people were making fun of me to try yoga, which is funny thinking of that now. And so I never really kept going. But then when I moved to Montreal, I started once in a while just getting into a yoga studio, doing a few class, and I had um, a friend that was a yoga teacher, so I would do some of her class sometimes. And then I guess during COVID, I started really to get more into yoga. And I went to a retreat that kind of like kickstarts my yoga journey. I've realized, okay, I prefer this type of yoga and this type of yoga, and I didn't know there was many type of yoga. And so after that, I had a more consistent practice and I really loved it. And I remember that my husband one asked me, during COVID, the tourism industry was off. So nothing was going on, no one was working. It was very challenging. And I remember him asking, so uh, if you'd like to do something else, what would this be? And the first answer was, oh, I would love to be in event planning because that's what I always wanted to do. But he was like, well, it's not happening. So what is there something else? And I had this dream, like it was like a dream that for me, I didn't even think it was going to happen. It's like, oh, you know what? I would love to be a yoga teacher so I can teach wherever I want to. I can have clients here and there, and if I don't want to work, I can be with my family, and I just like I could like teach in LA, I could teach here, and just traveling and teaching if I want to, and it's kind of like an international career that you can do wherever you want to. And so at that time, I looked up a school, but they were very strict on you needed to be training pretty much every day in their school, and it was very strict. So I kind of like gave up on that, and then tourism was back on, so I started working again in tourism, but I was still practicing yoga. And then at some point in my career changed completely. I was laid off from the company I was in because of budget cut and COVID not helping with tourism. And so I had to make a choice. And from there, I thought to myself, I don't want to go back to corporate. I've been investing too much time in corporate, and I feel that it's not rewarding enough for me. I already had kind of like a seed planted for coaching at that time because I was going to do a training while I was working in the winter. And so one of my friends told me, "What's your blue sky?" And it's kind of like a term you use in corporate to ask, create whatever you want to. It's like a way of brainstorming that when you want to create a project. And so I thought for a second and I said, for me, my blue sky would be to be a coach and a yoga teacher. And she said, "Well, what is stopping you now?" And I said, "Nothing, but it would be very intense to do both at the same time." And she was like, "But I think you're capable." And I said, "I think so." And then that week, I was interviewing several coaching school, and then there was this yoga school from my yoga teacher that I really admired and I loved. And I saw that she had a school, and there was a training starting the next day, and I was like, "They're never gonna accept me." It was 9 p.m. and they were starting at 9 a.m. I applied, and then the next day at 9 a.m., I get a message, and she's like, "Oh my God, Sarah, why didn't you tell me when you came in the class on Wednesday?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't know by Wednesday." So, yeah, is it possible? And she was like, "Well, you can start on Friday and like catch up the replay, but yes, would love to have you with us." And then I just, yeah, started the yoga teaching certification.
Wow, what a journey. So from all the challenges and also the environment itself during COVID time, and especially how like the tourism industry really was impacted with what was taking place. And and really sorry for being laid off in that way, but it sounds like it was also a moment where you realized this is my blue sky. This is what I want to do in order to be more fulfilled with that with my life. And to a certain extent, it sounds like it's a blessing in disguise where you had the opportunity to explore different things and get into yoga and just getting accepted overnight like that. When you were sharing that, I felt goosebumps because like it sounds like, well, I mean, either they're looking for people, but considering what you shared in terms of like the yoga industry, it's really stressful to get in. But it's also how like everything works out if you really truly believe in it and take that action. It's like when you wanted to move and live in North America and ended up in Canada. It's like you took that action to actually make things happen.
Mhm.
And how was it like once you completed the yoga school and also coaching in parallel? How were you balancing your time?
So, first of all, I wanted to say, because you apologized about what I experienced, and I appreciate it, but even though it was a tough moment, that was the best, it was the best that could happen to me because it completely changed the course of my life. So for me, that was a tough experience, but it was a, it was an obstacle. It was kind of like a detour in the right direction. So for me, it was perfect. Now how I balanced it. Obviously, it depends on the months, but last year I was more focused on my yoga business because on top of completing two certifications, we moved across the country because another dream of mine was to move to the West Coast and be closer to California. So obviously my husband also liked it. So we made that decision, but I had to start again from scratch. And compared to coaching, when I was doing my coaching online and I was able to keep my client from Montreal, it was not the same for yoga. I needed people to get to know me and also studios to trust me, which was difficult at first. And then so I started like creating my own yoga event, which were very successful. And so from there, I started having a more steady gig, let's say, in the studio. And so, and after that, I just kind of reassessed and decided, okay, so now I'm able to teach every week because, you know, compared to coaching, I feel that coaching, you can still work on your muscle by training and educating yourself, learning, but yoga, you need to practice. So if I was not teaching and practicing, then I feel that, you know, you lose your flexibility and things like that. So I truly needed to have something more regular. And when I did, I decided to kind of take a step back on all of my events and everything, and try to focus more on the coaching side. So that's why I kind of balance it out. Obviously, some weeks are more tough. Like the week before we left on vacation, I had like 5 events, but it was combined in just one week. So and then I was okay. So I'm trying to make sure that when I plan things, I plan it around it, and that I'm not overwhelming my schedule. And sometimes it happens, and obviously I communicate with my husband in advance that it's going to be rough because that week is going to be that I'm not going to be available on the weekend, and so he knows. And so we and he's very understanding and helping. So he has been supporting me throughout this whole process. And I think if I didn't have like a supporting partner, it would have been even more difficult, especially because we have a child. So if it was just the two of us, that would be okay. But since there's a kid in the mix, that's a little bit different, and it needs a little bit more planning and logistics.
Wow, I love a couple of things that you shared. Like, firstly, the communication aspect between partners, how it's so important to be on the same page and also preparing in advance. So whenever you have a busy season or week or day, that you're all aligned in the same wavelength so that you're able to support one another, especially if you have kids. And for anyone who has kids, like this is something, it's a must to have these kinds of preparations. And then when you shared that it was actually the best thing that happened to you, it sounds so inspiring as well because like just hearing what you shared from the beginning that you wanted to go into journalism and then you went into tourism and you wanted to live in a certain place and you kind of brought things to happen to how they are,
Mhm.
but also approach them in a way with an open mind that you're taking these challenges as a way to find a solution or to further develop and become more adaptive to that environment. It's very inspiring the way that you've seen things. And I don't know if it's me, but it sounds like it's just a state of flow that it's going through in that journey that you've shared with us. And what keeps you going? Like what motivates you to have that kind of insight or dedication to keep doing what you love and to learn and to experiment, and what is that thing that keeps you driven?
That's a good question. And I think I would say that when I seeing my clients transform
Mm.
and thrive, um, it drives me. You know, watching them build confidence, overcome obstacles, and create lives filled with purpose. It really keeps me passionate about my work. Their growth, I think, is my biggest motivator, especially in coaching. And in yoga, is just the look on their face after the class, that inner peace that I was able to bring. And it's validating in some ways, because when I was younger, when I was little, I was always that difficult child. I was always nervous, aggressive sometime, and I would never expect to be my younger self. Would have never expect to be the person that I am today, like helping people bring calm when I was always told that I was a difficult child. So I was not bringing calm. So, but chaos around me. So seeing that, I guess that's what keeps me going in the yoga. And tourism was my passion, but then yoga became my passion. and coaching became my purpose. So I think that's what keeps me engaged and motivated.
I love that. And when you were sharing about the faces of people after a yoga session, I don't practice yoga regularly or frequently, but I went to a class maybe 4 months ago or 5 months, and it was just a random class because I went to a place and I did a workout, and on my way out, there was a room where someone was saying, "This is a yoga class, and anybody can join." And I just decided to join, and the hour passed so quickly. And I remember how much appreciation I felt towards the instructor. And she said at the end of the practice, let's take a moment to thank ourselves for everything that we've done. And I've completely forgot about thanking myself for months. Like I was expressing gratitude and very humbled with everything that's happening, but I forgot to thank myself. And after that, I was just thinking like her bringing this awareness about how it's so important to thank ourselves really inspired me. Like I felt such a great connection to how we use our body within the yoga practice and the different elements, and also then connecting our mind to remember things that really drive us. Um, Thank you for that. Like that brought me back into that memory of how yoga is really something special in a way that it connects the body and mind and soul. And as we're like going above the time, or usually we aim for like 30 to 40 minutes, I was wondering if there's a mantra or like some sort of words of wisdom that you keep repeating to yourself that helps you to remain motivated and driven in the things that you've done. What would it be? It's like a tradition that we do on this podcast. I'd love to hear your mantra or wisdom.
Yes. So I think that my mantra would be, at least for the past few years, it has been everything happens for a reason. So I always like tell myself that when something happens, even if it's not pleasant, I would say it happens for a reason. There's something coming up. I don't know what it is, but I trust the process. And my mantra that has been for years now is really obstacles are detour in the right direction.
Oh, I love
We
that.
are detour in the right direction, and I'm living proof of it.
Mm.
So I it reminds me to embrace challenge and to take action, what which has been essential in both my personal growth, but also in helping others achieve theirs. So yeah, I think that would be my two mantras.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So obstacles are the the,
Detours
the detours
are
in
the right direction.
in the right direction. Obstacles are your detour in the right direction. I love that. Obstacles are detours in the right direction because you're in the right direction, and regardless of what happens, like when obstacles come, they actually are putting you in the right direction regardless.
Mhm,
I love
mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. I've learned so much as well from your story and what you've shared. I'm very grateful for your time and for inspiring us as well about how we could see obstacles and challenges in a way that's really help us to grow and adapt to the certain situations. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I think, I think I talked a lot about myself, so I think I'm good.
That's the point.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very nice and very natural. So I really appreciate your questions and trying to get to know me better. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it, and I appreciate your kind words. So until next time, thank you all for tuning in. And remember that today is the most important day of your life.